Hello everybody. This video is not specifically about a project. I'm going to carry on with some cream spinning here, and I'm spinning on the rose today. I might actually even drop the camera a little bit later so that you can see what I'm doing here, because I'm having a ball of a time here. I was supposed to complete the screen on the little gem, and then I thought, no, I've got one more bobbin to go. I might just as well do the other bobbin on the rose, and then I'll apply the two together. So, because I've been itching to carry on her. I've been tempted to do this a while ago already, but there's been quite a few things to do, so I'm back here now. Today's video is going to be a little bit of a stranger one, but actually not strange in the context of why I'm making videos. If you've watched my previous videos, you might have discovered by now that I want to teach people how to spin, how to be self-sufficient. Now, what does self-sufficient mean? It basically boils down to being able to, if there's no shop around, or for some reason, heaven forbid, there's no electricity anymore because there was a solar flare or whatever. If you watch my other video I've just made, that's on my Buddha Princess channel, you'll find out more about that. But because I realize that this is not information for everybody, and some people do not want to hear about all of that at once, I am doing this with a softer approach, so that everybody can sort of lean into it. If you've ever been on my website, you'll notice there among my blogs, there's also a sort of like a little red line going through it where I'm trying to tell people that they need to be prepared for a time when they're not going to get their clothing and stuff from the shops anymore. I do not want to scare anybody, but based on places where I've worked and lots of other information, I know that we are heading for tough times. Again, I'll put a link to that other channel as well for those who would like to watch that. Again, it's not for everybody. What I'm trying to get through to people here now is it is important to be able to look after yourself and your family when the comforts as people have known them for some reason are no longer there. And before anybody says, oh yeah, but it won't happen, you know, it is so easy for all of that to be gone. Now, normally if there's a natural disaster or anything, it's sort of in smaller areas, and eventually it gets fixed up and life can carry on again. But Earth is cyclical. This information is not generally sort of available, but if you go and do your homework, you're going to discover every 6,000 years or so, life on Earth gets seriously shaken up and all but destroyed completely, and a small group of people need to sort of start off from the beginning again. I'm not trying to scare anybody here, so please do not see it like that. I'm not scared of what's coming, because we all are going to die one day. I'm more scared of being one of the ones that stay alive and then not being able to look after myself. You know, it's stupid to know things are coming and not to be able to be prepared for that. Okay, so what am I hinting at? I think it's important for people to have a skill. We need a few things to survive and to make a good life possible again. And I'm not talking about the kind of lifestyles some people have been living lately. I'm talking about the way my great grandparents have lived before the war, because the war also destroyed everything and they had to start from scratch. I'm talking about the Boer War, for those who don't know. Their house was burned to the ground, furniture, everything that was in the house was gone. Then, to top it all, the English took over, and the Boers were considered sort of persona non grata. Nobody wanted to do anything with them. A lot of people actually had to move to the cities because their farms were destroyed. My great grandparents were luckily where I got my stock from. They just started over again. So the beauty part of that is they never bothered to get Eskom power here on the farm, because it was just way too far out, and not worth it. So they knew how to survive without electricity, and they just carried on like that. I eventually, when I returned from Europe, that's information you can get from the other channel if you want to know about that. I stayed in Europe for 5 years, between 2004 and 2009. When I came back to the farm, I got a small solar system going for lights and a fridge, because I'm telling you, in summer here, if you don't have a fridge, you don't have butter that's not running out by the door and things like that, your milk will get sour, etc. And besides, it's sort of always necessary to have something to cool whatever. So I had my small solar system here, but I know how to survive without power. It's not the end of the world. We have never been connected to any municipal system here because we're many kilometers away from anything like that. So we've got our French drain system. Eventually I had a borehole sunk, but otherwise we would get our water from the river or rainwater from the roof. These days you can't risk wanting to drink rainwater with all their chemtrails and all the poisons and stuff that's being rained down on everybody. Anyway, there are lots of ways to survive, but people who are living in cities, even small holdings where they have the electricity supplied to them and things like that, they've got what is called normalcy bias. They've had that for so long, well, they've never been without it. At least Eskom has shaken up some people. And for those people who watch from other countries, we in South Africa, our dear government have really messed up all the infrastructure, and the worst of all is probably Eskom, our electricity supply company, where we've got something like load shedding. People are allowed to use power for a certain time of day, and then it's switched off and given to somebody else, sort of like you used to have timeshare holidays. Now people have timeshare electricity. The irony with that is it is actually something that was planned back in the beginning of the century, that because people in government know that something else is going to happen pretty soon, it's heading our way already, and I'm talking about worldwide, not just here. They also knew they had to start getting people to prepare, but they didn't want to tell them for what, because otherwise it might cause stampedes and their workforce might not be so obeying anymore. So it was decided not to tell people what's going on, and to just sort of give them a gentle and not so gentle nudge to go and do certain things, like getting your own generator or solar systems, etc. Unfortunately, all along the way, there are also those who just want to make a lot of extra money out of it. Now, suffice it to say, let me just summarize it, and people can believe it or not. We are not going to have electricity for much longer. And I am talking about worldwide for that matter. By next year, the are going to be falling off completely in many different ways. We've got Apophis coming in 2029. Now, if you haven't read anything about it yet, I suggest you go and do a bit of study on the subject. It's a huge rock, if you want to call it that way, bigger than the Empire State Building, that is hurtling towards us, and he's going to make his turn sweeping around Earth. Now, normally they would call these objects NEOs, near Earth objects. And they normally, once they sort of within 1 lunar distance from the Earth, people would go and sit on the tip of their chairs and get very agitated, because that means as that rock gets closer to the Earth, it might get perturbed and its sort of approach might change. It might be sort of pulled into the Earth. Now, this is where things become quite interesting, because this rock that is really, really huge, as I've mentioned already, is not only going to be a lunar distance from the Earth making his turn, he's going to be so close to the Earth, it's actually going to sweep between the satellites and the Earth. That means, yeah, it is very, very close. I have done lots of research. I studied environmental management at UNISA. I didn't complete my studies because I realized it's not worth getting a piece of paper if I only allowed to study a limited amount of things, and I would rather just study it all. Anyway, I realized that what they're not telling people is that that thing is probably going to make impact. And knowing what they are doing and how people have been prepared for this already, because I mean they've known about this thing for a long time, they're probably going to try and shoot it up, make it smaller pieces. What was that movie? If I can get the name, remember the name, I'll probably insert it here. Armageddon comes to mind as well, but that's not Deep Impact. I think that was the other one. They sort of prepare people for what's coming. So now, if you know your Bible, Revelations, you know that one of those warnings were, rather go and read it and get your own information, and then you can put your own pictures together. The Earth is going to be impacted, and a third of the Earth is going to have a nasty surprise there. I also know that we are expecting a solar flare very, very soon, and I'm talking about the mother of all. That is going to be like one massive EMP that's going to wipe out electricity. It's going to really, cook all circuits of anything that can be cooked. So let me stop scaring everybody, because it's not intended as scaring. If you're dead, you're dead. You're not going to have a problem. So really, we're all going to die at some stage. But consider this. All of this has happened now, and here you're sitting in your house. You can't flush your toilet because there's no more water in the taps. Your fridge no longer works, so all your meat and everything's going to go rotten. You're going to have to find another way of preparing your food and keeping your stock, and your pantry will have to be set up a different way. That is if you're clever enough to have a pantry, because a lot of people are silly enough to think they can just run to the shops. Because here's the other thing, there will not be shops anymore. well, not the way you know them now, because there's not going to be a cold channel or aisle or whatever. You're not going to get your milk from there. You're not going to get milk unless you've got a cow and you know how to milk her. Eggs, you're not going to get eggs from the shop unless you've got your own chickens. Medicine, you're not going to have medicine because there's not going to be a chemist anymore. Because the chemists can't be supplied anymore. There's not going to be any factories anymore. There's not going to be transport anymore, because all transport these days rely on electricity in some form. So you're going to have to get what you want there. Now, I suggest everybody go and sit down. Get yourself a pen and paper. Write down what you need to carry on living. If you're in South Africa, imagine you one of those people who now have to, after the war, start over again. You might be lucky enough to still have a house, or it might have been burned down. It's better to imagine something happened to your house, because if you're in the city, you're going to be better off to move away. Because if you use your common sense and you realize everybody in your neighborhood are now desperately looking for food and everything, and they come knocking on your door, it might not be the best of experiences. So we know that there are all kinds of people living in the cities. Some of them will help each other. Most of them are there to help themselves. Okay. Other than that, so wherever you're going to set up house now, what are you going to need to carry on doing whatever you're doing? And that's where I got to spinning and alpacas to get fiber. Now, it would be a good thing to have some decent sheep, and preferably wool sheep, because a dorper is not going to help you. Their wool is not. You can do a little bit of something, but there's not enough of it, and it's probably going to lose half of it in the veld anyway, because it just falls off by itself. So, put that little tick there that you're going to need to make your own fabric. The one thing I would really miss, and I wish I could stock up on more, but I don't have enough cash floating around right now. But I would have loved to get a whole lot of cotton so that I can do quilts afterwards. And even though I can spin cotton, I'm never going to be able to spin it fine enough to make the beautiful prints that you can get these days. So if you can stock up on some fabrics, good idea. But here's some interesting things to keep in mind as well. Ordinary needle and thread, different kinds of thread, as many colors as possible, as much as possible. Pins, normal pins if you want to make dresses. There's not going to be a factory that's going to make sewing needles or even machine needles. You know, the sewing machine needles. Hand sewing needles. Anything sharp like that. So stock up on that now. You're not going to go wrong if you get a lot of that. Especially those people that say, but yeah, what if nothing's going to happen? Look, I know what's going to happen, but let's accept, okay, maybe it's not going to happen, to make people feel better, because some people would rather have that option. You can't have too many boxes of pins, needles, scissors, yarn. And again, I'm coming back to the reason why I decided to become an agent for Maya Craft. I am hoping to get enough people in South Africa to wake up to what's coming and to stock up on what they will need. because these are decent wheels, spinning wheels that will last a long time. I just saw a video of somebody on YouTube who bought a second-hand rose for the same price, no, for more expensive than what you can buy a brand new rose today. So she was a little bit taken for a ride, I think. But then again, she also got boxes full of fiber and drop spindles and things with it. But it just shows that these things, the value will never deteriorate. Instead, it's collector's pieces. And I'm not busy with sales talk now, not at all, really. I'm trying to get people to realize they must get something like this. A spinning wheel for every family is absolutely important, and you don't have to buy a new one. There are second-hand spinning wheels available. You can even go to Ashford for that matter and go get a spinning wheel, but get a spinning wheel. You're going to need it. And if there's more than one person in the family that can spin, get another spinning wheel. Because if you really have to start making all your own clothes, you're going to be busy spinning for a long, long time. Because with your spinning wheel, you can make your fabrics you can make your linen for your beds, tablecloths, everything like that. There's not going to be factories where you can go and buy bolts of fabric anymore. Keep that in mind. Yeah, it's difficult for people to get to this point and to accept what I'm saying if they not even really thinking of the possibility that things can go wrong. For those who are too scared to think about that, the other part is that everybody needs some kind of a hobby, and if things starts going bad around you, you need to go and sit and do something else, take your mind off it. So if it will make you feel better and less stressed, just see it as a way to relax. But consider this: if the pawpaw hits the fan and people need to be self-sufficient, everybody will also need to have some kind of skill up their sleeves to be able to barter for something else. I mean, we cannot, I've been trying to do it for a long time now. I returned to the farm on 2009 already. One person cannot be self-sufficient. It's impossible. Even if you have a whole family working together, there will always be something that you cannot supply, that you will have to get from somebody else. So if your neighborhood is sort of sorted out and set up correctly, then you'll have people diversifying and specializing, and that way you can start your own bartering system. So this is the time where people have to start thinking, what can they do, or what would they like to do? Because obviously it's also nice to do something that you like to do, because having to do something that you do not like to do is going to make a stressful situation even worse. So I've started giving messages on this particular setup that's coming since 2008 already. And I've discovered then already that people cannot come to grips with something like that. Very few people understand that it's important, and it's better to prepare for something that even if you know it's 20 years from now, it's better to change your lifestyle now already and prepare for that, so that when it does come, you actually take it in your stride and you just carry on with life as usual, because you're already prepped and ready. Most people would rather want to wait until somebody would blow a horn and say, better run for the hills and whatever, and then they hope they will remember to grab everything they need to carry on with their new life. I'm just not like that. Sorry, let me just move this on a bit. I'm not a person like that. I want to be prepared for anything and especially if I know something's going to happen, I go out and I do my studies, and I make sure that if it comes, I'll be ready. Now, here's the one thing I've tried to get to people through their minds so often, because when you discuss the subject, they would say to you, "Oh, don't worry so much," and things. But they do not understand that I am not worrying. Worrying means you sitting there in a corner and you're scared stiff and about all kinds of things. I do not get scared about things like that. I'm one of those, you can probably call me stupid, because when the going gets tough, I get going and I start doing everything. I would afterwards probably go and sit down and think, wow, what happened? But while it's going, I'm taking it in my stride. I've always been the one that sort of showed people what to do, etc., because I stay calm. It doesn't stress me. So in how many words must I explain that? No, I am not scared about anything. I am in my ready and going stride here. I'm doing what needs to be done, and I want people to be ready too. Yeah, I hope this message gets through and people understand what I'm talking about here. I make sure that I've got enough fiber for my spinning. I am hoping that I can get enough people to realize there is something they can do afterwards, because the one thing everybody's going to need is clothes. I'm telling you, we're heading for a mini ice age, so you're going to need lots of clothes. You could still say you can walk around with your bikini. I don't see myself walking around in a bikini. My figure is definitely not right for that. And I'm quite sure most people do not actually have that kind of a figure. And besides, it's not always summer on the beach. So with a mini ice age, you're going to need lots of jerseys. Beauty part, at least, people will not waste their clothes anymore. They're not going to dump it and give it away, etc. They will take care of it, and it will probably last a long time again. But still, I would challenge anyone to go and get enough fiber for one sweater or jumper, whatever you call it in your place of the world, or jersey. Get enough fiber for that. Now, let's say you've got your sheepy there in the backyard and you're going to shear it. Then you have to wash it, you have to card it, you have to spin it, then you have to either knit it, crochet it, or weave it. And that is what I'm trying to teach people now. How, firstly, to realize they're going to need to do that, and how they can go about doing that. And interesting thing is, it doesn't have to be sheep or alpaca. After the war, here on our farm, we've got weeds called sakbossis. That was at that stage actually grown like you would grow flax for clothing. They grew those plants to use the fibers for sacks, etc. But it gives you something pretty close to flax, and with which you can create linen. Now, I really want this coming summer. There were a lot of them this past summer, but I didn't think about it then. And then only after that, when they were sort of already all trampled and gone, I thought, geez, I should have harvested some of that, and just for the fun of it, go and extract the fibers again, because that's what my great-grandparents used. They made sacks with that. They even, my great-grandmother actually even made panties with that, because you would go and get your fibers. She did spin. I don't know who did the weaving for her, or maybe she did have a loom. I don't know. It didn't survive like that. I was sharing a room with her when I was 13 years old. She passed away 6 months before she was 100 years old. So I learned a lot from her, but only the things that you could learn from a great grandmother that was already very advanced in age. And by that time, she was living with my grandmother. We shared a room, so she didn't have a whole house full of all kinds of stuff. So I don't know what happened to all her stuff. All that luckily did stay with her, and where I did learn a lot from her is her herbalism, because she always made all her own medicine. And for those who think, oh yeah, well, we need doctors, otherwise we're going to die young, she made her own medicine, and she died just before her 100th birthday. Let that sink in. I think I've babbled enough, and besides, my fluffy is finished. I need to start another one, and I feel like a cup of coffee. Then I'll carry on doing some more spinning. But this is a different video. It might not be for everybody, but I hope it will get people to sort of think about, why do we spin and why do we need to spin. I mean, this is a wool jacket I've got on here, got his wool sign and everything, but this was woven and then sort of felted, or fooled as they call it. Something I brought with me from Europe. I can make something like this myself now, because I can go and spin my wool, then afterwards I can full it. I can sew, so after weaving obviously the fiber, I can sew my own jackets. So I'm pretty confident at this stage with my spinning wheels and my looms. I've got drop spindles. I have even got an old Singer sewing machine that still works with riddles. So I can do sewing. Obviously you can sew with your hands too, because I love doing quilting as well. But in quilting you hand quilt. I don't have a long arm quilting machine, and I've no intention of getting one because I know pretty soon it's not going to be worth anything if there's no more electricity. Besides, hand quilting is also one of those fabric arts, but I qualify it under fiber arts as well. It's enjoyable. You can make all kinds of things, even quilted jackets, things like that. I am reasonably set up. I'm still going to get some more cotton threads and sewing needles. I definitely need to get more machine sewing needles as well, different types, etc. Because I kept on thinking I must still get, and I never got around to do that. I need to get a few more scissors and things like that. So I would advise everybody to go do yourself a favor, even if you don't think this is possible. Get yourself a pen and paper and go and make your little list. It is better to be prepared and not need it than to one day sit out there and cry and think, why didn't I? You know, hindsight is 2020, but when everything is gone, it will be too late to be prepared. Rather do it now, and the older we get, the more important it is, I think, to be able to offer a service or something that you can bring value to your own life and make yourself valuable to your community as well. Not only that, anything you learn to do now is knowledge that you can pass on in later years to those who never learned to do it. So look at life a little bit different. Switch off that TV, put aside that telephone, and be here in the now. Think about what's important in real life. And it starts with switching off the power, and then take it from there. No more fuel at the fuel pumps. Um, yeah, it your bank card will be worthless because you can't draw money if there's no power there. The shops are empty. What are you going to do anyway? How are you going to feed your family? Be prepared. Um, I'm mentioning these things now, but in a few weeks or a few months, I think people are going to wake up and realize what I'm talking about now. Probably one of the reasons why I'm putting it now already. For those who are clever enough or wise enough, that's the real word to use. Common sense. I'm a professor in common sense. And I know there are a lot of people out there that just need to be reminded again that there is nothing can replace common sense. It's becoming time now to use your common sense. Think about it. And really, if there's one thing I can suggest people have to get now, is a good fiber stash. Because if the pauper hits a fan, you're not going to get fiber anywhere. You're not going to get on your telephone and try and look at advertising. You're not going to get on Facebook to try and find out where somebody's. My website won't be working anymore. At least something I've got enough of is fiber. More than enough. I've got spinning wheels. What can you do if you have to start making your own clothes? Okay, you can go and stock up, and you must actually stock up now on blankets. Forget about global warming. It's going to be global freezing. Prepare for that. Get loads of clothes. And if you've got younger children that's going to grow out of it, get clothes in bigger sizes as well. But be prepared for the day when you're going to have to make it all yourself. But not just make it for yourself to keep yourself and your family dressed, but to make it and to barter for those eggs you want, for the milk you want, for that chicken you want. There are so many things that we will not be able to prepare or have ready for ourselves. You might have to move into a community of people. Those communities are going to start operating the way it used to be centuries ago, where everybody in the community will have to contribute to the rest of the community and everybody will be working together. Make sure you've got something to offer your community. This is alpaca that I dyed yesterday. I dyed up a sock quantity of this particular color, so this will obviously become socks. I was thinking of blending it with a bit of Hampshire for more crimp, but I don't have any dyed Hampshire and I didn't want to add any white wool to this, so this is just going to be pure alpaca. And I don't have a problem with that, so that will be just a nice extra warm socks. I'm not going to use it for hiking or anything like that anyway. For those who don't know, if you do socks with pure alpaca, alpaca doesn't have that memory that you have in wool, so it won't shrink back to its original shape so quickly like wool. It's not, what should I say, foot hugging like sheep's wool, but it's got its own other qualities. It's just plain luxury if you wear it just for the luxury bit of it, not for durable hiking boots, socks. There's absolutely no problem with that. When it could be a problem wearing pure alpaca or knitting a pure alpaca jersey, for instance, it's also not going to jump back after you washed it. It will have a bit more of a boxy shape. I'm sure you'll know what I'm trying to say. So it's always best to add a little bit of wool if you want something to sort of jump back and retain its body hugging qualities. Alpaca is more your drapey fabric, and obviously if you use suri, there's even less, because it doesn't have that serious crimp you get in sheep's wool. I need to change another little bit of a angle here. Anyway, let's first do a bit of a ply back to see what it looks like. Very nice. Let's see if I can